It is just like a Marvel movie to make us wait over a year for their latest film to answer all of our burning Black Widow questions, just to leave us with more mysteries to be solved. The prequel film spun the MCU on its head by revealing secret origins, shadow organizations, and characters who have apparently been active since the beginning of the MCU. So before the Eternals and Shang-Chi do that exact same thing, let's dive into the Black Widow MCU mysteries that have left us reeling. Without a doubt, the biggest hanging thread Black Widow leaves out there is what happened to all of those highly trained assassins Natasha and her family released from the Red Room's hold. It's made explicitly clear that the organization has more secret agents infiltrating governments than Wakanda has war dogs. So what exactly happens when you flood the world with a giant squad of highly trained Black Widows? While I would love to think that they all moved on and had happy, peaceful lives, we've all seen how that usually goes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's not even taking into account more specialized characters like Alexei, Melina, and Taskmaster. There's little hope that Alexei and Melina just went back to the pig farm. I would bet that they followed in Natasha's footsteps and are dismantling what's left of the Red Room's influence. As for Taskmaster, well, this being Marvel, I highly doubt we've seen her don the skull mask for the last time. In the grand tradition of Marvel villains like Obadiah Stane and Alexander Pierce having more influence over world events than we thought, it was revealed that Dreykov has been manipulating world events for decades. He's been using the Widows to topple regimes, manipulate world leaders, and schedule photo ops with the rich and famous. For my money though, he easily could have helped steer the UN towards signing the Sokovia Accords. If you manage a highly successful organization of global super spies, the first thing you'd want to do is make sure the Avengers aren't going to come knocking on the door to your flying evil base thing. One of the breakout characters of Black Widow was the infinitely entertaining Red Guardian. The Russian Captain America apparently had a long superhero career in the lost superhero era of the 1980s. This was the same time period that Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne were suiting up as the OG Ant-Man and Wasp. While he easily could have faced them once upon a time, his story about fighting Captain America just, well, it doesn't add up. Or does it? Steve Rogers may have been frozen in ice since World War II, but he's also a guy who can be in two places in history at once. The last minutes of Endgame showed that Steve returned to his time and was living with Peggy all along. While many thought that he was in an alternate timeline, Loki ended that argument by proving there were no alternate timelines in existence after Endgame. Could Alexei's story about fighting Cap be the first story we've gotten about Steve's life after he returned to Peggy? I'm pretty sure one mystery that is going to stay buried is the identity of Natasha's real parents. In Black Widow, it's established that Natasha was taken or sold by her family only for her mother to try and track her down. Well, Dreykov did exactly what you'd expect someone like Dreykov to do, and her mother was buried in an unmarked grave. As far as her father goes, Endgame teased that Ivan was Nat's father's name, leading many to think this was a setup for Black Widow. Well, apparently that was all for nothing. Fans have been eagerly awaiting the story of how Natasha and Clint became friends ever since the Avengers established they had been besties since some mysterious Budapest incident. That movie established that Barton was given the order to take Romanoff out, only for him to make a different call. What we may never know is why exactly Clint decided not to eliminate Nat when he was ordered to. This pivotal moment where Barton chose to believe a trained liar was the bedrock of their entire friendship, and it's a shame that we'll never get to see it. Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine has had a rocky road to get to the MCU. Her first appearance was supposed to be recruiting Yelena to take out Clint. Instead, she first appeared in a longer scene in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where she was seen recruiting John Walker as her US agent after he beheaded someone with Cap's shield. So far, her Nick Fury routine is proving to be successful at pulling together some of the MCU's most morally flexible agents. I don't know about you, but I need to know exactly what Val is up to. In the first scene of Black Widow, it's made explicitly clear that Alexei is a super soldier in the same vein of Captain America and the Winter Soldier. This is kind of weird because it's been established that recreating that serum proved to be all but impossible until Wilfred Nagel cracked it. We know that Bucky, the failed Winter Soldiers, and Isaiah Bradley were a few of the successors, while Bruce Banner turned himself into a giant green rage monster trying to reproduce it. At some point, there was apparently a Soviet scientist who cracked it, but it seems Alexei, like Isaiah before him, was the only one to survive the procedure. I'm pretty sure we would have heard if there were like 6 Red Guardians running around out there. Apparently, Clint isn't actually Natasha's most reliable friend. Black Widow establishes Rick Mason as the guy to see if you're a spy on the run who needs a favor. He apparently works hard helping all the Black Widows, Jason Bournes, and John Wicks of the MCU to stay off the grid with all the firearms and vehicles they require. What it doesn't establish is how Natasha knows Mason in the first place. The clean-cut independent contractor doesn't exactly seem like a shady jack-of-all-trades spy master. My guess is that Natasha met him when they were both S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, but he fell back on his new career after that whole Hydra thing took his spy career down. Or something, I don't know. He's in the comics, read those. The big mystery everyone was asking after those trailers is who exactly that Taskmaster guy was gonna be. I mean, it was pretty clear that they weren't gonna just pull the mask off to reveal Tony Masters from the comics. Turns out it was actually Dreykov's daughter, Antonia, all along. Throughout the movie, she establishes herself as the scariest Terminator since the Winter Soldier. Of course, that brings up the question of whether Taskmaster ever took Winter Soldier on. We know that the Red Room was actively working against the Hydra branch of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that they were trying to replicate the success of the Winter Soldier program. Taskmaster and Winter Soldier were both active at the same time, meaning it's very likely that they fought in the past. Will we see Antonia and Bucky reignite a long-standing rivalry if they meet again? Maybe instead they'll form a bond over their shared lives of hypnotized assassinations. They certainly do have a lot in common. The most important piece of Natasha's backstory we got in her solo movie is that she's apparently a huge Bond fan. While this does add a cute bit of color to her character like Wanda's sitcom obsession, it does bring up a massive question that we need Kevin Feige to weigh in on immediately. Who is Nat's favorite Bond? The evidence in the movie would point to her liking the campy Roger Moore version, but I'd put good money on her being a Pierce Brosnan fan. She was taken from America in 1995, which is the same year GoldenEye came out. This was likely the last Bond film of her childhood, seeing as she was at the mercy of the Red Room for the next decade or so. While most of these mysteries likely won't be solved, there is one we know we'll see this year. Yelena is on a collision course with Clint Barton. Hawkeye, she probably could have taken out, but Ronan is on a whole other level. Bring your samurai sword, girl. You're gonna need it.